The Pittsburgh Steelers have made a huge announcement. Also, football is back. The long wait is over as the Steelers play the Houston Texans today in their very first preseason game. So, in this video, we're going to go over the Pittsburgh Steelers' huge announcement that they made earlier in the week, the depth chart. But also, the Pittsburgh Steelers have announced who will and who won't be playing in this week's preseason game against the Texans. Just give a heads up, Russell Wilson won't be, so we're going to see a lot of Justin Fields. But first, before we get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like this video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, the depth chart was released ahead of this week's preseason game, and it wasn't all too surprising. It was mostly everything that we already knew, and it was so early on in the offseason that the first depth chart doesn't mean it's going to be the same as the last. But anyway, let's go over that first depth chart that the Pittsburgh Steelers released. So, you look at the quarterback situation, and just like Mike Tomlin said earlier in the offseason, Russell Wilson, he is listed as a starter. Even though he was limited basically all training camp with his calf injury, barely participated, he's still the starter. So he truly is in pole position of that starting quarterback number one job. Meaning that Justin Fields, even though he got basically all the first team reps with the first team offense against the first team defense, he's still listed as the backup, even though he's been showing out in camp. The third quarterback listed is Kyle Allen, the fourth being John Rhys Plumlee. Now, looking at the running backs, Najee Harris is listed as a starter, Jaylen Warren is listed as his backup, and the third and fourth are Cordell Patterson and the Michael P. Ryan. So even though Jaylen Warren is listed as a backup here, you could basically tell, based off the sharing reps from last season, that Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are both basically starters, but that obviously they list Najee Harris as the true number one starter on the depth chart. Anyway, moving over to fullback, Connor Hayward is listed as a fullback, and Jack Calito is his backup. You look at tight end, and the tight end position, Pat Freiermuth, he's listed as a starter. Darnell Washington is listed as his backup. Connor Hayward is listed not only as a fullback, but as a third tight end. And then McCole Pruitt and Ronnie Williams is listed as a fourth and fifth tight end. So you move over to offensive line now, and you look at left tackle. Dan Moore Jr. is listed as a starter at left tackle. His backup is Troy Fautanu. I'm going to get more into that because that's a little bit interesting right there. Left guard Isaac Seumalo, the starter. Spencer Anderson, his backup. Center Nate Herbig is listed as a starter. Zach Frazier, rookie, is listed as the backup. Right guard James Daniels, starter. Mason McCormick, backup. Broderick Jones, starter at right tackle. Dylan Cook, his backup. So I've said that the Troy Fautanu thing is interesting because if you've been paying attention to training camp, most of his reps have come on the right side. He's been practicing more on the right side. So you would think that he would be listed as a backup at least to maybe Broderick Jones. But he's listed as the backup to Dan Moore Jr., even though his reps have come mostly on the right side, not the left side. I guess because he's played so many snaps at left tackle in college that they list him as a left tackle, but I would have thought that he'd been listed as a backup right tackle, not the backup left tackle, or maybe just both. But anyway, moving over to wide receiver, the Steelers did not list in terms of 1, 2, 3 at the wide receiver position. They listed 3 starters on the depth chart, basically like every team does. And the starters were George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson. Those are the 3 starters. It's not listed 1, 2, or 3. And then the backups being Roman Wilson is the backup to Calvin Austin, Quez Watkins the backup to George Pickens, Des Fitzpatrick the backup to Van Jefferson. That's how it's listed on the depth chart. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball now, you look at defensive tackle. Cameron Hayward is the first team defensive tackle, obviously. DeMarvin Leal is his backup, and Isaiah Loudermilk is a third. You look at nose tackle, Keanu Benton. He's listed as a starter, with Montravius Adams listed as the backup, Braden Fiocco being the third. So that switches from last year. Obviously, towards the end of the last season, it ended up happening where Keanu Benton was the starter. But if you remember, early on in the season, the initial depth charts, Montravius Adams was a starter at nose tackle, Keanu Benton was the backup. So Keanu Benton, he earned his spot last season, and it carries over now. Defensive end, Larry Ogunjobi is listed as the starter. Dean Lowry is listed as the backup. Logan Lee is the third. Left outside linebacker, TJ Watt is the starter. And Jeremiah Moon is listed as the backup. And Kyron Johnson is listed as the third. That's going to be interesting because it's really up in the air right now of who the backup at edge rusher will be. Usually the Steelers carry 4, but anyway, move over to right outside linebacker. Because when you look at right outside linebacker, they list 3. Alex Highsmith, starter, Nick Herbig, backup, and Marcus Golden as a third. So Marcus Golden isn't listed as a backup to TJ Watt for some reason, or a backup to Alex Highsmith. He's listed as a third behind Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and then Marcus Golden. He'll probably end up making the team. Those will probably be the 4, but it's just interesting to see how they list it on the initial depth chart. It probably doesn't mean much, but that's just how they did it. Looking at inside linebackers, the starters, the starter at left inside linebacker is Patrick Queen. The starter at right inside linebacker is Elandon Roberts. The backup to Patrick Queen is Peyton Wilson. And then Mark Robinson. The backup to Elandon Roberts is Tyler McKinovich. And then Cole Holcomb. Obviously, Cole Holcomb, he would have been listed higher in the depth chart, but he is injured, and he's on the list right now of probably missing a few games. You look at right outside cornerback, Joey Porter Jr. listed as a starter. Darius Rush is listed as a backup, and Anthony Everett listed as a third. You look at left cornerback, Dante Jackson, starter. Corey Trice Jr., backup, and then Kalen Barnes, the third. You look at slot cornerback, and you look at it, Beanie Bishop Jr. He's the starter. He's listed as a number 1 slot cornerback. And then Graylin Arnold, is listed as the second. And Cameron Sutton is actually listed as a third, which is shocking. You would have thought that maybe it would have been Cameron Sutton, then Beanie Bishop Jr., then Graylin Arnold. But no, that's how the Steelers have listed. It still might not mean anything. Cameron Sutton will still probably make the team. But that's just how it's listed right now on the depth chart. That's it for the defense. Moving over to special teams, this is pretty easy. Kicker, Chris Boswell. Punter, Cameron Johnston. Long snapper, Christian Kuntz. Holder, Cameron Johnston. Kick returner, Cordell Patterson. Punt returner, Kelvin Austin. That's the easiest it's going to get. So that's the special teams order for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But that's a huge announcement. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers' initial depth chart. And some of the things that were interesting, like I said, were mostly based off of the starters, maybe a slot cornerback, and the backups listed at outside linebacker, but mostly just where Joe Fatano was listed, and also Nate Herbig being listed as a starter at center and not Zach Frazier. Obviously, he's older, more reps, everything like that. So that's the initial depth chart for the Steelers. Now moving over to this game preview against the Houston Texans, because Mike Tomlin listed who's in and who's out, and it's not too surprising because most of the veterans will not be playing in this game. And let me just go through who won't be playing. Mike Tomlin says that he will hold out veteran safety Mink Fitzpatrick, defensive tackle Cameron Hayward, left guard Isaac Seumalo, outside linebacker TJ Watt, and quarterback Russell Wilson. He also will not play outside linebacker Alex Highsmith, who's dealing with a groin injury, inside linebacker Patrick Queen, who's dealing with a foot and ankle injury. So those are 7 players who have been ruled out. He didn't rule out anyone else, but it seems unlikely that wide receiver Roman Wilson will play. So those are the players are out. So we will not see the first look at Russell Wilson. We will still see what Justin Fields could do, and we'll see him play with the starters, and hopefully he lights it up. So that's the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of preview of this game. It's going to be very exciting to see all the reps that were taking place in training camp. All the 7-on-7s, all the 11-on-11s, everything like that, all the amazing catches made by George Pickens, finally in game time for the very first time in 2024 season, 2024-2025 season in the preseason. See what everyone could do in live game action football. We all know it looks good in t-shirts, shorts, and pads, but can you do it against another team when you're actually trying to fight for a position on the roster? Let's see what they could do now on preseason football. Just to kind of look at the storylines of this game, or to what to maybe watch out for, what to watch out for is just to see the rookies play. Just to see how Zach Frazier does. Is he able to be a mauler? Mason McCormick, is he able to be a mauler? Trey Fatondo, how does he do? Is he going to end up beating out Dan Moore Jr. for a starting spot on the offensive line? We're going to have to be able to watch that. So we're watching position battles there. We're also going to see the wide receivers. Big talk about wide receivers trading in the last few months. Do the Steelers really need a trade for a wide receiver, or can Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson hold down the number 2 and number 3 wide receiver spots? Also, first time seeing Arthur Smith's offense. How is his schemes doing, and what does he like to run in terms of plays and personnel? It's going to be the very first time we get to see that as well. Also, just seeing all the new players on this team for the very first time. It's going to be very exciting to see them in a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey. But anyway, this is just the preseason. These games don't matter in terms of record, but it's great to see the camaraderie and to see how well the team is put together after all the training camp sessions that they have been through. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Who will win this game? The Pittsburgh Steelers or the Houston Texans? And who are you most excited to see? Also, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about the depth chart. Is there any surprises? And what would you have wanted to see differently on the initial one? So, like, comment, and subscribe to this channel as well if you like everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis, everything like that. I cover it all. I'll continue to cover it all. And until the next video, I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.